Welcome to Code Rhetoric with Tam Talk. I am Tamara Abraham, founder of Abraham Medical Coding Coach. And in this segment, we will be focusing on the impending or threatened conditions ICD-10-CM guidelines. This particular guideline can be located in Section 1 under Conventions, General Coding Guidelines, and Chapter-Specific Guidelines. So the impending or threatened condition guideline states that a code with any condition described at the time of discharge as impending or threatened, we're to go code based upon the following steps. If it did occur, we're going to code it as a confirmed diagnosis. So for example, the patient may have come in with an impending or threatening condition, but by the time the encounter is complete, it's either confirmed or not confirmed. So in the event where the diagnosis is confirmed, we're going to code that diagnosis. The second step, if it did not occur, we're to reference the alphabetic index to determine if the condition has a sub-entry term for impending or threatened. And we're going to also reference the main term entries for impending and for threatening. So in this particular scenario, let's say the patient comes in or is diagnosed with an impending or threatening fracture. So our first step is to go to fracture, which is our main term, and then we're going to look for the subterm listed as impending or threatening. If there is a code for impending or threatened, we're going to assign that code. In the instance where it is not a subterm listed under fracture, we're then to refer to the impending and threatened main term to see if the fracture is listed as a subterm under those categories. And if it is, then we're going to assign that given code. Now, our fourth one, in the event there aren't any subterms listed, we're going to code the existing underlying condition or conditions and not the condition described as impending or threatened. So let's say we have, again, an impending fracture, but the patient also has osteoporosis. And if there isn't a code for impending or threatened fracture, we're going to code osteoporosis as our diagnosis code for the encounter. So here in our first coding example, the patient is diagnosed with impending coronary syndrome. So in our first book steps, we're going to go to impending. And actually, I went backwards because I was supposed to go to coronary syndrome first. But in this case, we went to impending and then the subterm coronary syndrome. And our ICD-10-CM diagnosis code is I20.0. And then if I do decide or take the syndrome approach, then we're going to look for the subterm coronary. And it doesn't state impending or threatening. However, it lists insufficiency or intermediate. And I noticed that the ICD-10 code is the same for impending as well, which is I20.0. So our rationale is, although it did not occur, but per our guideline, we are to refer to the alphabetic index and locate the subterm. If the subterm is listed under impending or threatening, then we are to select the code. So in coding example number 2, the patient was diagnosed with threatened job loss and anxiety concerning. So in our book steps, we're going to go to threaten, and then we're going to look for the subterm job loss, anxiety concerning. And once we locate the subterm, our ICD-10-CM diagnosis code is Z56.2. And again, our rationale is it did not occur, but again, per the guideline, we're to refer to the alphabetic index and locate the subterm. If the subterm is listed under the impending or threatening section, we are to select that code. So with coding example number 3, I decided to do something a little different. So in this particular encounter, the patient was diagnosed with suspect child abuse, also with a swollen left eye. So with our book steps, we're going to go to suspected condition, rule out, and when we go to that particular main term, it actually directs us to observation. So once we go over to observation, we're going to look under abuse, physical, and then child, because again, our diagnosis says it's suspect child abuse. And our ICD-10-CM diagnosis code for that is Z04.72. We're also going to code for the swollen left eye because that is an existing condition. So in our book steps, when we go to swollen, again, swollen will lead us to edema, which is also another term for swollen. And so we're going to go with eyelid, because there isn't an eyeball edema or swollen eyeball. So we're going to go with edema to eyelid, and because it was uh, swollen on the left eye. So we're going to drill down to the left. And our ICD-10-CM code is H02.846. And so our rationale for this is if the subterms are not listed, we're going to code the existing underlying condition or conditions and not the condition described as impending or threatening. So in this particular case, we did have an existing condition as well as a suspect type of diagnosis. There are codes for both of those, so then we are to code both of those diagnoses for this particular encounter. So our coding tips, we always want to pay close attention to the impending and or threatened condition or status. And again, in the event that there is not a subterm for the impending or threatened condition, we are to code the existing condition. Remember to code the existing and underlying condition if the subterms are not described. Remember to code to the highest specificity. That should be with all of your ICD-10-CM guidelines or coding. Always try to code to the highest specificity. When in doubt, it is okay to query the provider. And when in doubt as well, always reference your coding guidelines.